Few wrestlers in the world today have managed to have the longevity of R-Truth. Whether it's working for the WWF back in the Attitude Era, reaching the top of the mountain in TNA, or continuing to find relevance by building a niche for himself in the modern day, Ron Killings will seemingly have a place in wrestling until the day he chooses to stop. As an in-ring talent, he's consistently been one of the most underrated in the business, and as a performer, he's given us some of the most genuinely funny moments in wrestling history. So join us today as we take a deep dive into his fascinating entire career journey in What's Up? The R-Truth Story. Ronnie Aaron Killings was born on January 19, 1972 in Williamsburg, South Carolina. Growing up, Killings would play high school football as well as competing in track and field, both of which he received college scholarships for. However, he turned down these offers, instead deciding to follow his passion for hip-hop. While trying to fund his music career, Killings spent part of his youth involved in street crime. Unfortunately, this got him in trouble with the law and led to him spending 13 months behind bars as a result of drug charges. It was while living in a halfway house after his release from prison that he met Jackie Crockett from the National Wrestling Alliance. Jackie saw something special in Killings and offered to train him to become a wrestler. At the time, though, Killings was too laser-focused on building his rap career. However, he would reconsider a couple of years later after reconnecting with Crockett, who by this time was working for World Championship Wrestling, bringing the budding talent to various WCW and Pro Wrestling Federation events so he could get a taste for the industry. As it turned out, it didn't take long for Killings to fall in love with wrestling, and beginning in 1997, he worked as a manager for PWF while training with Manny Fernandez simultaneously. By late 1999, he was ready to hit the ring where he went by the name K-Crush, going on to win the NWA Wildside Television Championship on December 12th of that year. It was clear to anyone who was watching him during these first months that Killings was a natural in the ring and had "Star" written all over him. Seeing this, his friend Rick Michaels convinced the newcomer to send a promotional video to WWE, and it was after seeing this that the company decided to sign him to a 2-year developmental deal, assigning him to Memphis Championship Wrestling to get some seasoning before hitting the main roster. As K-Quick in Memphis, Killings once again proved himself by winning the Southern Heavyweight Championship twice, and by feuding with wrestling royalty Jerry Lawler. These achievements were quick to catch the eye of WWE management, who wasted no time in calling him up to the main roster on November 13, 2000, where he debuted as part of a tag team with Road Dogg. This union would give K-Quick a chance to let his music talent shine as the two came out to the ring rapping their own theme tune, Get Rowdy. Keep in mind that this was during the peak of the Attitude Era, a time where no matter where you were on the card, you became famous by just being a part of the company. So when Road Dogg was released from his contract in January 2001, K-Quick used his newfound notoriety to segue into a singles career, primarily competing in the hardcore division where he would win the belt while it was still being contested under 24/7 rules, something he would revisit years later. He was also able to form a real-life friendship with Vince McMahon during this time, with the two often said to be close backstage as McMahon loved K-Quick's sense of humor. Still, this wasn't enough to keep him in a job as he gradually began to fade off of TV during the Invasion angle and was eventually released in early 2002 during a roster culling. Some would have let this bring them down, but not the notoriously positive Killings, who went back to Tennessee, this time Nashville, where he signed with TNA on June 19th of that year. Killings would make his debut at the promotion's first ever weekly pay-per-view, and after only 2 months on the roster, found himself in the world title picture. On August 7th of that year, Killings would defeat Ken Shamrock at NWA TNA 8 to become the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, in a historic night that would mark the first time an African American had ever won the title. From there, Killings went on a run of successful title defenses and put on some of the best in-ring work of his career, fending off the likes of Jerry Lynn, Low Key, and Scott Hall before he eventually dropped the belt to Jeff Jarrett on November 20th, ending a successful 105-day run as world champion. Following this, he released his debut album, Invincible, then reunited with his old partner Road Dogg, now going by BG James, to form a trio called 3 Live Crew with Conan, who went on a tear in the tag team division, eventually winning the TNA World Tag Team Championships on November 26th in a 6-man match. This also meant that they could utilize the Freebird rule when defending the belts after this, as all 3 were considered champions. But while his main focus remained on the tag team division during 2003 and 2004, Killings still had ambitions as a singles star. He set about regaining the NWA World Heavyweight title, and on May 19th of the latter year, finally got his shot, going up against Raven, Chris Harris, and the then-champion AJ Styles in a fatal four-way match where Truth would win the title for the second time. After this, he and his 3 Live Crew stablemates got into a program with Jeff Jarrett and his team of mercenaries, a feud which saw Jarrett take the belt back from Killings and also led to 3 Live Crew briefly getting another run with the tag titles in November of 2004. Unfortunately, by 2005, dissension was starting to sow itself within the stable. This started when Billy Gunn joined the company and began courting his old DX teammate, hoping to rekindle their partnership. While BG James found himself torn over which side to choose, the remaining 3 Live Crew members feuded with Gunn and Monty Brown. And while James tried his best to remain impartial throughout, this only served to alienate Truth and Konnan, who at one point began referring to themselves as the 2 Live Crew. Eventually, though, the former Road Dogg was able to prove his loyalty to the team and even managed to bring Gunn into the fold too, with the unit now briefly becoming a foursome, unsurprisingly named the 4 Live Crew. This lasted for around a month until, in a swerve, Konnan was the one to turn on James and Gunn, effectively ending the stable as a result when Killings refused to have anything to do with him afterwards. Now a solo act again, Killings took part in the King of the Mountain match for the NWA World title at June 18th Slammiversary, but was unsuccessful in becoming a 3-time champion that night. Not long after that, he was forced to take some time off to recover from an injury. He wouldn't return until 2007's Slammiversary, but by then, backstage politics had led to him wanting out of the company. He tried to resign on June 19th, 2 days after his re-debut, but this was refused, and he ended up coming back at August 12th's Hard Justice pay-per-view to confront NFL star Adam "Pac-Man" Jones. Following that, the two would actually team up briefly to win the TNA World Tag Team titles, but the Carolina native remained adamant about wanting to leave, and by December, he and the company were able to come to an agreement so that he would be let out of his contract, allowing him to go and rejoin WWE for the first time in 6 years. This return would officially begin on the August 29, 2008 edition of SmackDown, when Killings, now going by R-Truth, defeated Kenny Dykstra and re-established himself as a popular mid-card presence on the roster. Interestingly, the company by and large chose not to acknowledge that he had worked for them as K-Quick years prior, despite Truth not having aged a day in the intervening years. By July 2009, he would debut a new gimmick called Pretty Ricky, where he sported fake teeth and crossed eyes as he often unsuccessfully tried to get into arenas to wrestle. This, sadly, was one for the pile of all-time bad gimmicks alongside the Gobbledygooker and the Shockmaster, and mercifully didn't last long. R-Truth is a funny guy, but getting this one over was beyond even his capabilities. Nevertheless, he rebounded by starting a program with Drew McIntyre and then represented Team SmackDown at Bragging Rights on October 25, 2009. He was also a contestant in the 2010 Elimination Chamber match for the World Heavyweight title, but aside from these brief flirtations with the main event scene, his place was firmly rooted in the mid-card throughout the remainder of that year, as he would be drafted over to Raw, where he beat The Miz to win the United States Championship on the May 24th episode. And it seemed like this was where he'd remain, a dependable hand who could be relied upon to heat up a crowd, but not someone to be placed at the top of the card. Those who assumed this would be proved wrong, however, when on the April 11, 2011 episode of Raw, just 4 days after he got married in real life, Truth became the #1 contender to the WWE title. Before he could get to the match, though, he would lose his shot to John Morrison a week later in London, England, causing Truth to turn heel as he reasoned that trying to entertain fans was getting him nowhere. The most memorable part of this heel turn, though, wasn't the promo afterwards, it was the fact that he solidified it by lighting up a cigarette, something unheard of in the WWE's PG era. Truth followed this up by growing more and more paranoid, developing a conspiracy theorist character, and taking out Rey Mysterio after accusing him of stealing his chance at the WWE title. He then pointed his ire at the WWE champion John Cena, which led to him getting a title shot at the June 19, 2011 Capital Punishment pay-per-view, one which he inevitably lost. Before he could do that, though, Truth would have to apologize for his recent actions, and in true comedy fashion, he did so, but only after interrupting a Steve Austin and Vince McMahon in-ring segment while dressed in a Confederate soldier uniform, all while singing the Little Jimmy song. Little Jimmy, of course, was the invisible child friend of Truth who managed to get so over with fans that it led to some classic comedy segments, some of the best of which were Killings showing off the photos of him and Jimmy's trip to Disneyland, and Ricardo Rodriguez being forced to sing for the boy, all of which got the approval of audiences. Truth rode this wave of fan support into starting a union with The Miz named Awesome Truth, which saw both men argue that they were being held down by the company, and eventually getting kayfabe fired after assaulting a referee. They would not be stopped, however, and ended up invading the Hell in a Cell match between John Cena, CM Punk, and Alberto Del Rio at that year's titular pay-per-view. This caused the entire roster to angrily run out to stop them, though with the two men being locked inside the cell, there was little they could do until the police arrived to cut open the door and take them away to jail. Suddenly, Truth now found himself in one of the hottest angles in the company, and after he and Miz were reinstated on the October 10, 2011 episode of Raw, they were able to follow up by beating CM Punk and Triple H in a tag team match at October 23rd's Vengeance, and then cost John Cena the WWE title later that same night. This set up the biggest match of Truth's career, as he and Miz took on the team of John Cena and The Rock at the November 20th Survivor Series in what was the Great One's first match in 7 years at that point. Of course, he would be on the losing end that night. He had to be. It was The Rock's return, after all. Soon after this, Killings found himself on the receiving end of a 30-day suspension after failing a drug test, and when he returned, he became a babyface once more after attacking The Miz and disbanding Awesome Truth. From there, he joined forces with Kofi Kingston and won the tag team titles on the April 30th, 2012 episode of Raw. The duo went on to defend those belts against teams made up of Dolph Ziggler and Jack Swagger, Unico and Camacho, and the Primetime Players over the next few months before dropping them to Kane and Daniel Bryan at Night of Champions on September 16th, 2012. As a result of this successful run, though, Truth and Kingston would be named Best Tag Team of that year in Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. His next move after this was to go after the United States Championship once again, starting a program with Cesaro on October 29th, but ultimately being unable to retain the belt no matter how hard he tried. After that, he didn't do much over the next 2 years, popping up in a few matches, but rarely with any real story behind them. Still better things were coming in his personal life as he and his wife Pamela celebrated the birth of their daughter on November 15th, 2014. This seemed to somewhat reinvigorate Truth, and by WrestleMania 31 on March 29, 2015, he would be part of the 7-man ladder match for the Intercontinental title, and although he would be unsuccessful that night, he would get another shot, and another marquee pay-per-view match in the process when he was involved in the Elimination Chamber for the same belt on May 31st of that year. He didn't win that night either, but he did manage to eliminate King Barrett, starting a rivalry between the two. This gave Truth even more opportunity to flex his comedy muscles as he would mock his opponent by coming to the ring in a crown and cape, labeling himself as King What's Up. He further proved that he was a man of many talents when he released his second studio album, Killing It, on April 1st, 2016. His in-ring career hit another upward swing around this time too, as he teamed with Goldust to form the Golden Truth. In typical WWE fashion, it took a while for the odd couple to come together, however, with them first having to go through months of misunderstandings and refusals on both sides. When they did formally join forces, they went on a losing streak designed to set up an eventual heel turn from the oldest road's son, and after months of teasing, the inevitable finally happened when Goldust attacked Killings on the May 15, 2017 episode of Raw, ending their partnership and building to a match between the two on July 10th, where the heel got the victory. Not long after this, Truth suffered an arm injury which would require surgery and put him out of action until the spring of 2018, stopping any momentum he had for the time being. When he did return to TV, it was after having been moved over to SmackDown during that year's draft. There, he formed a comedy double act with then SmackDown Women's Champion Carmella. This began when Truth mistakenly believed that beating the Staten Island Princess would give him a shot at Shinsuke Nakamura's United States title. Carmella, of course, was hesitant to team up with Truth at first, but she eventually relented and would even be instrumental in helping the former NWA champion to get a win over The Miz on the September 4th, 2018 episode of SmackDown, his first televised singles win since May 2016. Shortly after that, the duo regularly began incorporating their dance breaks into WWE TV. They also became one of the highlights of Season 2 of the Mixed Match Challenge, with their comedy antics fitting in perfectly for the lighthearted tournament, as they managed to win the whole thing by beating Jinder Mahal and Alicia Fox in the finals at December 16th's Tables, Ladders, and Chairs pay-per-view, giving both competitors the honor of having the number 30 spot in the 2019 Men's and Women's Royal Rumble matches respectively. Truth even got to face WWE Champion Daniel Bryan in a non-title match on an episode of SmackDown leading up to the Rumble, suggesting that he might even have a chance of winning the annual bout. Of course, this wasn't the case, and in typical R-Truth fashion, the whole thing turned up to be a setup for a gag as, well, coming to the ring at the pay-per-view on January 27, 2019, he was attacked by Nia Jax, who subsequently stole his spot, becoming only the fourth woman to enter the Men's Rumble match after Chyna, Beth Phoenix, and Karma. As a make-good for this, Truth was awarded a US title shot on the follow-up episode of SmackDown, where, to the surprise of many, he was able to get a roll-up victory over New Japan legend Shinsuke Nakamura to start his second reign with the belt. This was followed by a month of comedy antics as he defended it against the likes of Rusev, Andrade, and Rey Mysterio, before eventually being defeated by Samoa Joe, who was having none of the joking around. What this brief title reign would turn out to be more than anything else, though, was a precursor to perhaps Killing's most memorable story during his time with WWE, his run with the 24/7 Championship. The title was first unveiled on the May 20th, 2019 episode of Raw by Mick Foley, after fan demand to see a return of the Hardcore division with its 24/7 stipulation. Interestingly, the first champion, decided by a scramble that night to see who could get to the ring first and claim the belt, wasn't actually R-Truth, but Titus O'Neil. It would, however, be Killings who quickly put his stamp on it and the division as a whole with his continued comedy performances. Sure, it was basically a retread of Crash Holly's Hardcore title reign during the Attitude Era, but it didn't matter because he was funny enough to make it work. This period also served to catapult Killings to a new level of fan popularity, as his Raw segments regularly became the most viewed on WWE's YouTube channel. To date, he has held the belt a record 45 times and was the first man to hold it for more than 24 hours in one reign. He's used these runs to have entertaining mini-programs against the likes of Drake Maverick, Mike Kanellis, and even his partner Carmella. And he's also been able to get celebrities and other outside parties in on the fun, as the likes of NFL star Rob Gronkowski, NBA player Enes Kanter, EDM musician Marshmello, and even Santa Claus have managed to wrestle the belt away from him at various points. It's likely that when he does retire, this will be the part of his career he is most remembered for, at least among WWE fans, and it's not hard to see why. Comedy under Vince McMahon has a habit of flopping hard, but R-Truth is one of those reliable hands who always seems to be able to make everything he does genuinely funny. This also means he'll always have a role in the company under the niche he's built for himself. When looking at his best comedy moments over the years, and above the 24/7 title saga, you can't help but remember things like his brief run as Dolph Ziggler's stunt double, him trying to climb a ladder to success during the Royal Rumble, or Truth cutting a promo about how he was going to win Money in the Bank despite not even being in the match. Still, even with all this, it's important not to forget his more serious accomplishments too. As the first and only ever recognized African-American NWA World Heavyweight Champion, he'll go down in the history books, and it's well-deserved. As for all his comedy brilliance, he's always been just as talented as a wrestler, whenever he's been given the opportunity to show it. Well guys, what did you think of the video? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, as well as follow Wrestle with Andy on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.